Hello, I'm Brenda. This is Write Your Memoir and Change Your Life, starting with yours. And today I'm interviewing Christi Christians. Now, Christi has published her book, and that is a major achievement in any writer's life. And her book, Wager on Forever, tells the story of her 30 years of life in a cult. Now, Christi, welcome.
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, thank you so much.
So you write about the intriguing world of cults. Now, cults draw us in, and we think that people who belong to cults are other people, not people we may know. But your story throws a light onto how many people get enticed into cults and trapped in cults. But what is it that the reader can expect to find in your book as you talk about this topic?
First of all, they can expect to read a fascinating story. And it is through telling my story that they can get deep insight in how cults work. Mm-hmm. And also how people get involved in cults, why and how. Mm-hmm. That is very important. So my book shines light on the emotional and psychological aspects of why people get involved in cults.
Because we never really just fall into a cult, right? We get drawn into it. And it's never, from what I've read of your book, it's not, I can't say never, because your book is the only one I've read about a cult. But it seems like it's never quite what it seems. It's presented as something else, and then you get drawn into it. And then one day you realize, actually, well, first of all, you may realize you're trapped. But there's something you say in your book which is intriguing, and that is that everyone knows that somebody's in a cult except for the people who are in a cult. Can you speak to that? Everyone else can tell you're in a cult except for the people in the cult.
Yeah, because the people that are in it are so involved, especially emotionally, that they are blind to everything else around it. They believe in the ideology, they believe in the leaders, they believe in the purpose of the group, and they are so brainwashed that they don't see anything else.
So that's an interesting concept, the brainwashing. We use the term a lot. You think of brainwashing, what is that? But from what I can tell from reading your book, it's a gradual process.
Yes, it is gradual and unnoticeable. Because in the beginning, when you join, you think you are joining the best group in the world with like-minded people, and you have absolutely no idea that you're joining a cult. Nobody joins a cult. And it's only later that the group reveals itself as a cult, and that you start to kind of see some things and you start to doubt a little bit. But by that time, you are so involved and you are so trapped that it is very hard to leave. Mm-hmm. And your whole life is built around it. Your social life is in there because they discourage people to have a social life out of the cult. So you are so trapped that it's very hard to leave.
So that is one of the elements you show in your book, is how isolated you become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not allowed to interact with people outside of your group, your community.
Yeah.
So this cost you relationships. This cost you giving up a lot in your life in order to pursue what you thought was an adventure, pursue what you thought was going to give you this new moment of living at a really emotionally vulnerable time of your life.
So the fact that you gave up so much for it is also the reason why you can't leave. Because in my case, it was a lot. I gave up my my total old life, my marriage, my children, my thriving business, and my country, because I moved from Belgium to the United States. So you give up so much that in your mind, it's almost impossible to leave. Well, I was involved with them for 30 years. First 10 years when I was still living in Belgium, and I was traveling all around the world to be with the group. And then after 10 years, I moved here. And then I was involved for another 20 years. So that's 30 years altogether. So
That's a
a
long time.
long time.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And so you do obviously leave the cult because you're no longer in the cult. You wrote a book about your experience. You wrote your book about leaving. But leaving the cult, as you share in your book, brought its own challenges, its own emotional upheaval.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's when you leave that you start realizing what you did. Because as long as you're there, you buy into everything. And when you don't anymore, then it's like, wow. And then all these feelings came up: guilt, self-blame, anger, regret. So that came all up after leaving. And then I had to process all these emotions.
Okay, and that you do talk about in your book. So that leads me to a couple of questions. One of the things is when people leave a cult, there's an element of shame, embarrassment linked to it because you got caught up in this ideology. And that's something I know you've grappled with. So there are people who leave a cult who never talk about it. Whereas you have chosen to reveal this part of your life and to talk about it and to expose your experience and your emotions. What motivated you to do that?
Initially, when I just left, well, a few weeks after I left, what motivated me was I intuitively started to write.
Okay.
It wasn't so much like a choice. I had the desire to release all these emotions on the page. And it helped a lot to let them live on the page instead of let them constantly live in me. So it was more kind of a release. It was just release in the beginning, but then later, as I just kept writing and writing, I thought, oh, maybe this could be a book, and I could help other people. First of all, for people also that come out of cults, to give them understanding and support, and also for other people to make them more understanding and more compassionate towards people that are in cults or come out of cults.
Okay. Have you spoken a lot about this experience, or have you mostly written about it? So that's kind of because now you're going public with it with your book. Have you
Yes.
been public with it up till now, or is it still something you feel you've had to process and grapple with?
Yes, I had also the opportunity to speak about it with people. There were also people that left around. I was not the only one leaving. There were a group of people that left around the same time than me. So I interacted with them, and that was very, very supportive. But also being in our writing group with you, our writing coach, and with a small group of people who are also writing about challenges. Of course, there was nobody else that came out of a cult, but all of them also had challenging experiences in their life. And this group support was so important to me, very important.
That's true. Yeah. So you found then, from what you're saying, is you had people you could talk to about it within your group of other ex-cult members. and you had people you could talk about it with, and you felt acceptance with the writing group. But the broader public, what do you feel is people's response to someone who's been in a cult?
I'm not saying everybody, because I don't know, but I heard here and there things like, oh, how can you be so stupid to get in a cult? So people can't understand. And maybe, rightfully so, maybe they never would. That is possible. That is possible. There are many people that see that. And because I had brought some guests to our group meetings, because we were very much encouraged to bring people. And most of those people, they didn't come back. They felt that there was, and it didn't speak to them at that time. It really depends in what situation in their life people are. When they are in a vulnerable situation, that they're making big changes, like a relationship breakup, or moving to another place where they don't know anybody, or moving away from home, like young people. So a lot of people are not, they just see it. But, and those are the people that mostly think, they say, how is it possible? How can you be in a cult and stay there for so long? Well, in my book, I explain exactly how that is. And also how the process of recruiting goes. The process is so gradual, so slow and unnoticeable, that when we are caught up in the ideology or in the charisma of the leaders, we don't hear that, or we don't see that. We are just caught up.
Okay, so that's an interesting comment. You talk about the fact that people feel like, oh, how could you be so stupid to join a cult? So one of the comments I have that I've noticed about that is a lot of people who join cults are actually very intelligent people.
Yes, they are.
They're very intelligent people. But I think what I've gathered from reading your book, and from what my understanding is of people's dynamics, is what you talk about, the charisma of the leaders. From what I've gauged, the charisma of the leaders is such that they know how to find that vulnerable place in your emotional makeup, and your great desire that we all have to belong somewhere and to be known. And that seems to be what they speak to. So it's not about intellect. It's not about how stupid you are or how clever you are. It's about manipulative people, charismatic people, dynamic people who know how to find that place in you where there's a need, and they tap into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cult leaders are also very intelligent, or smart. Let's call it smart, in that certain way. They know exactly who to target, and they know exactly how to target them. And
well, they're manipulators, right? It's like my client, Gil Merrick, who wrote his book, Haunted Victory. Same thing, where there's child abuse. The predator knows which child to target and how to approach them. This is happening in the same way. The cult leaders are predators who are finding people they can bring into their sphere of influence for their benefit.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You got that right, Brenda.
Yeah, it wasn't for your benefit, right? There was very little benefit for you. Well, there was benefit for you for being in the cult.
There was benefit in the beginning.
But you were there to serve others.
Totally.
Okay, so that's an interesting comment now with regard to that. And that leads me a little bit to your title. I know when we were working on the title of your book, there were a lot of titles we went through. And then you decided on your title, Wager on Forever.
Yes.
Can you speak to what made you decide to settle on Wager on Forever, which is a title you just decided on really just before you published?
Yeah, well, mainly pressure.
Pressure to publish?
Yeah, because I had made appointments, to deliver my book and all that, and I didn't have a title yet. so I was pressured now to come up with one, and I had gone through so many titles that I thought, oh, I'm never gonna find a good title. And then the pressure of the last moment, I came up with this. Not suddenly, but I was doing research and I was looking for words on Google. And then I found this verb to wager. And it said, it is, you get involved in something that is very uncertain. We had no certainty about forever. It was almost like a bet. So then I thought, oh, wagering on forever, and then we discussed it, and then finally I came up with wager on forever, and I am very happy with it now.
On forever, can you speak on why the wager was on forever? Because that speaks to the topic of your cult.
We haven't talked about that yet. Yeah, so the cult was about immortality, but physical immortality. So staying alive forever in this body, is staying here on this planet forever. So that was the ideology of the cult.
Right. So you were taking a bet on living forever by joining this group. And that's why it's called Wager on Forever. Right. Yeah. So interestingly, even while you were in the cult, you share in your book that one of the cult leaders died, as did other people in the cult.
Yes.
And what happens in a cult when something happens that speaks completely against the ideology?
Oh, what happens is there were 3 leaders. First one died. The 2 leaders that left, they are so charismatic and well-spoken that they spoke our group into continuing and in doing even better.
Oh, right. So they really know how to package this and remarket it.
To twist it, and I fell for it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what your story is about. So if people want to know more about your story, they know where to get your book, which is on Amazon.
Yes, my book is on Amazon as an ebook and a paperback.
I think I want to talk about 2 things as we now move into your writing life.
Yes.
And that is, as we look at one of the reasons you said you wrote your book was really, it was almost like it came from within you to write. It was part of your healing process. You didn't even know that this was going to be a book that you might publish. In fact, it sounds like it was part of your exorcism, to get this out of you and on the page and to release it. So how have you found that writing your memoir has been part of your healing? Because I have experienced that for myself. I find a lot of people start writing in order to heal. So what advice do you have, or how can you add to this concept that healing can help you to heal? I mean, writing can help you to heal and change your life.
For me, it was huge. I cannot even imagine how I could have gone through this without writing this book and without being in our group with the support of you and the other people. It is, well, there are many facets to this. Like, you also get to know yourself, because I dare to look at things that I, before start writing, would have never dared to look at. And therefore, it was also so crucial to have your support, because sometimes it was very challenging to look and to face the things I did. Was painful and challenging sometimes, but the magic is when you dare to look at it and dare to feel it and let those feelings pass through you instead of suppressing them. That is really the healing process.
And you had 30 years of suppressing things, right?
And
As well.
exactly.
Because in the cult, you can't talk about things. You have to suppress them. You have to fit in.
Yeah. So it was absolutely the best thing I have done to come out of this predicament.
And now you're in a really good place in your life, and that's wonderful. Yeah. And it's given you a new lease on life to write your book.
Yes, absolutely.
So where in this writing process did you find that you got stuck? Like, what was the hardest part? Where were there moments you thought maybe you could give up and just walk away from this project?
Yes, I had it, in fact, only one time, like really one time. And that is when I finished my first draft and just before I started working with you as my coach. So I had been first going through this, what they call the vomit.
Yeah.
Just vomiting on the page. And then I started kind of to divide it a little bit in chapters and all that. And I got like a first, what I call the first draft. And when that was done, I thought, oh, is that any good? Can I do anything with this? Am I going to continue this? Because in the beginning, it was very sporadically that I was writing, not regularly, but then more and more, I was writing more regularly. Am I going to keep spending my time on this? And all these questions and doubts came up. And then I went to YouTube. If I want to continue this, I need help. That was for sure. So I went to YouTube and then I found your videos. Well, I found several videos, and your videos spoke most to me because they were clear, to the point, and I really felt that I could learn from you to really make a book out of this. Because in fact, that first draft wasn't not really a book. And if I look back at it, there's almost nothing left of that first draft in my book. Those were all things that I did not expect. Like, I had the tendency to teach a lot. And you said, when you're telling a story and you have to stay with your story, and if you want to teach something, which I did, it needs to be woven into the story. And in the beginning, I did not get that. So you taught me how to do that. So now there is still, people can learn a lot from my book, but it is all woven into my story. That is the difference. So, and then as soon as I started working with you, I got unstuck until the end. There were still difficult moments, but I never thought of giving up anymore.
So then your process, how long did it take?
Well, I think when it's a first-time book, about 30 years of your life, it takes a bit. Because I had no experience in how to create a book or anything. So for me, it took me, when I came out, so I came out of the cult on the end of 2019. And then a few weeks later, I started to write. And then it was more sporadically because I still had other things going on. And then that I started working with you was in the fall of 2022. And that's when I started really thinking about a book and serious working on it. So from 22, and then it came out just now, but the writing was done in the fall of 24. So that took me then still 2 years of kind of continuously working on it. because it is intense for a writer, you have worked on it, on writing a piece, and you're so proud of it, and then somebody says, well, that really doesn't belong there.
How true that is, yeah.
But you were always gentle and supporting, and it was kind of easy for me to receive feedback from you, though I was always overwhelmed by it. Like, oh, so now I have to change this and rewrite this. So I did a lot of writing and rewriting.
You did, yeah. I've guided you through it. I've helped you through it, helped structure you through it. But ultimately, as the writer, you have final say on what your book is going to look like and what it's going to be. My role is there to help you, guide you, coach you, encourage you, and help you develop a storyline. But ultimately, it's your decision.
You did an amazing job. I mean, I could never have done that without you. I could never have like a finished book on my own. That would have been totally impossible.
And I think that's a great thing you share. So thank you for that, because I think there's a lot of people do think, oh, I can write the book. It's my own story. I just have to tell my own story. And that's all I need to do. So I can do this on my own. But really, the emotional support that often is needed in writing a memoir, maybe not so much for a novel, but for a memoir, most of us are writing stories that really tap into who we are as people, especially that first one, as you say.
Yeah.
And then we start discovering things about ourselves we didn't actually see because we've never gone there before. And so there's this strong sort of emotional support and we're not therapists, and I'm not a therapist by any means, but just somebody who comes alongside and says, you can do this, you can keep going, we can make this happen, here's a deadline, let me help you with this, is really, I think, because so many people who start off writing books never finish them. We start to do it and then realize what it's going to take to finish it. It's not as easy.
I have a funny story on that. I wrote a scene in the book. And later I thought, oh no, I can't put that in there. That is just too much, too intense. And I took it out. But I still had it, of course. I didn't erase it. I still had it in another folder or so. And you asked me to send something, and I sent you a few pieces of my book, and that was in there. I don't know if you remember that. And you said, why did you take that out? That is a very good scene.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
So I put it back in there, but it was intense at that moment, like to put that out there,
And I know which scene you're talking about. I know what you're writing about. People can read your book and they can try to decide which scene it is. We're not going to tell them. But I think why that scene, you took it out, and why I said to put it back in, is because it was a very vulnerable scene. It was very much a scene where you said, well, I don't really want people to know that.
Exactly.
And memoir is really that choice of how much do I reveal, how much do I show, and how much vulnerability do I give on the page so that the reader knows me and knows where I'm coming from and knows the decisions I made. Because like you're saying with that vomit draft, the vomit draft isn't there to now become the book. That's to get it out on your page. And from there, we now need to really sift through and go, which are the vulnerable scenes that belong and which are the ones that really the reader doesn't need to know that I don't need to be this. This isn't a memoir for me, is not a tell-all, because we hurt people when we tell all. But when we can take from our life key scenes that actually illustrate who we are and why we made the decisions we did, those are the scenes that belong in the book.
Yeah, and that is also an art too. That is also why I needed your help a lot, to know what to leave out and what to put in. Now, so today I have no problem anymore with it. You see, you grow in that. And it's part of the story, and I'm fine with it now.
So every book makes a promise to the reader. So, right, we have a message. There's a reason why we've written this book, not just to tell our story, but to convey something to the reader so that at the end of the book, you can say, well, dear reader, this is what I wanted to tell you. This is what I learned. This is what my life story has shown me that I wanted to share with you. What is your promise of your book?
First of all, of course, there are always different aspects to that. But first of all, I think we all go through challenges. That's just part of life. Now, I went through this kind of challenge of being trapped in a cult. Other people go through, can be trapped in relationships or in whatever, or other challenges of loss. So I think the main thing is that people can get out of it, that I promise the reader is whatever we experience, and whatever age we are, because I was 70 when I came out of the cult. Whatever age we are, whatever happened in our life, we always can get out of it and start anew. We can get over the past. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not always easy, but we can do it. And I show during the last half of the book, how I do it. And I think that is a very good thing for people to read, that especially when they are also in a challenging situation. It can bring them hope, and they can do it. When I can do it, they can do it too. What I also want to say on that, I touched briefly on that in the book, but that might be my next book more. Manipulation and control does not only happen in cults. It happens in many other areas of our life. But my book makes it that people can recognize it. They can learn how to recognize it soon and not be caught up in it, and navigate those control dynamics with more autonomy and more independence.
So thank you, Christi. It's been wonderful to talk to you, and it's so wonderful to have partnered with you to help you get to this point. And also, I agree with you. I think it's been fabulous to see that at any age, and you're the living proof of it, we can regain our lives, we can regain autonomy of our lives, and we can reinvent our lives, reinvent ourselves, reconcile with our stories, reconcile with what's happened in our lives.
I want to say one more thing about that is important for me to say, that I have absolutely that I forgave everybody that is in the story. I totally forgave myself for doing what I did, because it first starts with forgiving yourself and all the people that were involved in it, because that is also necessary to move forward, that you can move forward clean and in unity without feelings of ill feelings towards the people. So yeah, I wanted to emphasize that I freed myself from that.
Yeah, and writing your book has been part of that healing process.
Oh yeah, totally.
To bring you to that place.
And it's from there that you are free to start a new life.
Well, that's why I have write your memoir, change your life, starting with yours. Because we do. That has been my experience. It's your experience. I see it with so many people I coach, that we write our stories, we write our memoirs to unpack our lives, to process them, to come understand them, to contain them, to get them out of ourselves. And we do want to help other people. We really do. Yes. It's why I also wrote my book, the same reason. but then it changes your life once you've done it in ways you won't
Yes.
know and expect, and it's really exciting and fabulous. So, well, thank you, everyone. If you want to get a copy of Christi's book, Wager on Forever, it's available on Amazon. Find it there in order to find out more about cults and see what Christi went through and how we can, at any age of our lives, reclaim it, forgive it, and really reinvent what it's going to look like going forward.